Have you seen the American movie, Don't Look Up?
Yes.
Yes.
That.
So that's also what's happening right now. Everybody's saying about, as you said, the Russian threat. That's a serious thing happening.
Yes.
And nobody cares. And people just, still being friends with Russia, making business with Russia. And
it's a great analogy. And that film is great because it shows the TV news networks pretending this isn't happening, pretending there isn't a threat, pretending that there isn't terrorism on the streets, pretending that Russia isn't the aggressor. And they're all acting like everything's okay. That film is a perfect analogy of what Russia is doing to this country and what Russia will do to the rest of Europe. And the film ends with the annihilation of Earth. Rightfully, because if we allow fascism and extremism and places like Russia to continue what they're doing, it would be the end of the world. So it's fitting.
I was reading the quote that said that against the best enemy of any propaganda is intellectualism. Is that what you mean when you're saying waking up?
No.
Knowledge?
No, I think it's investing, putting MI6's resources, deporting Russians, taking the Russian threat seriously. It's allocating all of our intelligence services in the rest of the West to combating Russia, to not allowing them to enter our countries, to not allowing them to drive cars with registration plates that support terrorism. That's the moment that we wake up.
Last year I had a meeting in Brussels at the European Union. I had a meeting with a lot of people there. It was kind of a huge excursion for journalists. And I was a part of this group. And I remember when we were at the Department of Cybersecurity at the European Union, and they said, we were talking about the Russian propaganda and the narratives they are spreading. Actually, lots of narratives about Zelensky that I haven't heard ever. And something about he's having villa where he's spending money, that he's stealing money. So the thing is, what he said, that Russia is spreading propaganda everywhere. It's paying, as you said, billions of dollars.
Yes.
But they said, you cannot imagine how much money they're spending on propaganda against Ukraine. It's like the top of the top.
Yes.
Especially for the last around 5 years. Just enormous amount of propaganda. It just, wow.
Which doesn't really work because people in Ukraine know propaganda when they see it now. And the idea that so Russians are sort of...
I think it's so easy sometimes even for very smart people to become a victim of propaganda.
Well, that's true. I mean, I always say that countries that have a closer proximity to Russia understand it far more.
Far more.
But yeah, I mean, that's also true. But Russia like to focus all the propaganda on the conscriptions that are happening here and people being abducted in the streets and people being, whatever. Whereas this is actually only really seriously happening in Russia. Nightclubs being raided constantly, gyms being raided constantly. The people that are fighting here in this country are volunteers, people that choose to fight. These are the people that I speak to all the time. Of course there's a draft, that's normal in a war. But when it comes to people actually being pulled off the street against their will, that's mainly happening in Russia. And that's the kind of propaganda that they're throwing against here constantly, and it doesn't really have much of an impact. My biggest concern is that it works in Britain and it works in America. Every single time I go home, I feel like I'm going crazy because people have no idea about the Russian threat. They think that there's two sides. I was on Irish TV recently, and they were like, what about people on the other side? What about,
On what side?
On the other side of the front line. That's what they asked me on Irish TV. Do they not have feelings? Do they not have dreams? And I was like, yeah. When I was looking up at a drone that was about to drop a grenade on me in Kherson, I was definitely looking through the lens and thinking, I wonder what the operator thinks. I wonder if he has a family. I wonder if he has dreams.
That's a dark humor.
Bullshit. Yeah, no, this is the problem with Western media, is it thinks that this is a two-side situation, and it isn't. There's an aggressor and there's an innocent country. But yeah, I mean, no time for this.
Yeah. Caolan, I was privileged to be on your premiere of a movie that touched me so much. The movie about a lot of ways of Russian genocide against Ukrainians. And that was a movie about Ukrainian farmers, and especially about Ukrainian farmer Alexander. You mentioned him before. And Alexander Gordienko, he just recently died, and that was a very, very sad story. Every loss of Ukrainian is a very sad story.
Of course.
But he was a heroic person. And how are you right now feeling after you going to release movie publicly? What reaction you wanna see from the audience? What message the audience see and hear and understand from this touching documentary?
I want Americans that support freedom and democracy to look at that farmer, to look at Alexander, who carried a shotgun every single day, who was badass, Texas style, and for them to realize just what Russia is doing and what's at stake. Everyone loves farmers all across the planet, and he had a choice. He could have gone anywhere else, but he stayed to defend his land, to grow food from his soil. And he represents every single value of America, which is freedom, democracy, and the love for your country. And that is what is at stake in Ukraine. And that's why so many Americans love Ukraine. But that's also why I made this film, because he represents everything that Americans believe in. And what Russia is doing, a communist dictatorship, fascist state, is to destroy that freedom. And he represents it. And you remember at the end of the film, every single farmer, they said he was liberating his land, and he motivated us to still grow food from our soil, to still exist, to not leave, to not flee tyranny. The reason that the Second Amendment exists in America is to have the right to bear arms against a tyrannical government. Well, that's Russia. And that's what he did when he held his shotgun. Yeah. And that's why I made that film.
Wow. And also in that movie, that amazing Ukrainian lady farmers, they were explaining why they are doing this, why they are not running away. Extremely touching, to be honest, because I was like, and their optimism, Caolan. I think sometimes people who are far away from the front line, far away from the threat that they are living under, and they are not as optimistic as those people. It feels like they're just living and, enjoying every minute of their life. And thanks to them, we have food and bread and vegetables on our tables.
They're amazing. Their optimism, again, it comes back to what we talked about earlier about survival instinct kicking in. So many of the farmers that I interviewed said, we didn't realize what we had until it was gone. When her son was liberated, then they came back and they realized how beautiful and fertile the soil was in their country. And that's when they realized this new appreciation for their home. And that's also why every single farmer I spoke to used to speak Russian, but they learned Ukrainian to make a point. And that's why they're not going to leave. It is the most inspiring thing I have ever seen in my life. And Khersonians are incredible.
When you were presenting the movie, the family of Alexander Gordienko was there. Mm-hmm. I think probably all of them, or mostly all of them.
Yes.
What feelings did you have at the moment? I remember you was quite speechless, to be honest.
I was speechless. I mean, his daughter was there, everyone was there. They gave me, I remember I was standing on stage and they handed me a bread from his last harvest. And they just appreciated the fact that someone was telling their father's story. And it was strange because a month ago, this week, I was on a flight to Ireland and I was looking out at the clouds and I found out the news that Alexander was killed. And I became obsessed with his story and I couldn't stop thinking about him. And Alexander's daughter said to me that on his way to heaven, he stopped on that plane and told me to make this film. And I'm not spiritual, but there's something spiritual about all of this. And she realized that I'm very good at storytelling and very good at filmmaking. And I was probably the best person to be able to show this. It was unbelievable. But I'm just extremely proud and privileged to have been able to tell his story. But everything in Ukraine feels so symbolic. That bread that they gave me had the symbol of Ukraine at the top. It had the flag underneath it, and it had corn sewed onto the side. I've never felt anything like it before, but it felt right. I'm really glad that I could have told that. But they turned that misery of their father being killed into passion that I've never seen anywhere else in the world. And his legacy was incredible. So I've just felt proud to tell that film, but I mean, I'm still kind of processing it, really.
Yeah, it's actually, this film, it's worth to be seen by millions. And that's what I want to happen with this movie.
They will.
And, you know, to summarize probably on some inspirational note, I know you have a very good nose about donations to the Ukrainian 69 Brigade, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just tell me what has happened. Maybe our viewers don't know, but you are very persistent with the donations and helping Ukrainian army to get what they need. So what did you get? What has happened?
Yeah, no, so in the last couple of hours, I got a voice note from the brigade. So how do I explain that, actually? In the last few hours, I received a voice note saying that I finally hit the target, and this was to get 2 trucks to the front, to units that are in Pokrovsk. And these cars are amazing. They've got jammers on the top, and it was extremely exciting to hear this. Amazing, because I love telling the truth about what's happening in this country, and I love telling stories about what Russia's doing and exposing the war crimes that is happening here. But being able to physically help people who, I love soldiers on the front. Every single time I stay with units in Sumy or Dobrobilia, anywhere, they always cook an amazing meal, and they just are the best people, the best. And being able to get them cars feels incredible for the soul. So this has just happened. This is great. And I think I'm going to try and donate a lot more. But it was always hard to do because I'm a journalist, I'm not an activist. And I would get accusations by saying, well, you're on the side of Ukraine, you're being paid by Zelensky, you're doing this and this and this. But I don't really care about that anymore. It feels great to be able to help people that are genuinely on the side of good. And I saw Paul Conroy last night as well. This is a journalist that has been to 19 wars. And he said, this is the first time I've ever taken a proper side. This isn't a civil war. This isn't a religious war. This is genuinely good versus evil. And I don't care if people call me an activist for supporting this country. I actually don't care as a mainstream journalist. This is genuinely on the side of good, and it feels great to help.
To be honest, sometimes I hear from war reporters that they are saying, when you are filming on the front line, sometimes you don't know which side is more guilty and it's not sure. But the only war is completely clear who is aggressor is with Russia and Ukraine.
Of course.
So, I mean, that's what I've heard recently, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm really appreciated that for the foreign journalists, war correspondents, that they're very good at this. They realizing what's happening, and they know the truth.
It's obvious. I mean, it's obvious. You can see this.
It's obvious, yes.
Every single time I've seen a missile attack, it's been against a civilian building. It's been against innocent people everywhere. In Kherson, drones targeting buses, maternity wards in Odessa, priests in Kherson. It's obvious. So that's why it feels great to be able to actually tangibly do something. But yeah, I don't care about anyone that says otherwise.
Yeah. Well, Caolan, thank you so much for that you are doing what you're doing with your reporting, with your volunteering, as you said, because it's becoming part of your job and part of you, actually, because it's just good that you are doing that for Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was cool.